Hey, it's Jill with Close to My Heart, and I am here to bring you the third video of 4 in our watercolor series. So if you haven't had a chance, you'll want to reference videos 1 and 2 in this series to learn even more about the capabilities of your watercolor paints. Today we're going to work on a technique called smooshing. It's very technical and it's actually very fun. So let's get started. Here you can see a piece of art that we've created with this technique. And what is awesome about it is that it turns out different every single time, and that's part of the fun. So it is really organic, and it's a really fun way to play with color, to play with water, to layer and create an entire background. This is just basic white cardstock, and we were able to create such a beautiful scene in that background. Again, that's really organic. That lets the photo really pop, and that is really fun to add stamping techniques in as well to elevate what creative background you are making here. So I'm going to show you a few different ways you can go about creating a smooshed background. So the first of which is using your all-purpose mat. So if you don't have this tool, it is a crafter's must. It is completely wipeable. You can heat set on it and it won't get messed up. You can paint on it, use texture paste, anything that you want to use in your crafting supplies, you can put onto this all-purpose mat and simply wipe off when you're done. So it is an awesome tool to have. So the first way I want to show you how to do smooshing is to create this as my paint palette. So I'm grabbing a basic water brush, and I'm going to come into my paints and I'm just going to have fun picking colors. So if I want to mimic kind of what we did on that layout, I'm going to grab some pink, and I want to get as much paint as I can, and I'm transferring that paint, not so much water, just using enough water in my water brush to pick up enough paint, but see, I want a darker pigment to come onto my palette, or to my all-purpose mat that I'm using as a palette. Now we want kind of an orangey shade, and again, I'm not even cleaning my brush, I'm just coming into that next shade of paint and getting as much of that color as I can, and just transferring that down. So if you're not getting a lot, add just a little more water so that you can actually pick up the paint and transfer it to the all-purpose mat. Okay, so there's some orange. And I'll just go ahead and add some yellow as well. We'll go with this really bright one. And when you mix it with that orange, again, you're going to get a beautiful ombre effect. And we'll transfer this down. And you can easily just wipe off. You can see I've been using these paints, and so I've got lots of colors going on top of each other, and that's totally fine. If it bothers you when you're done, you can always wipe it down with a wet paper towel or a baby wipe or something and get them right back to their original color. But I like to just keep mixing and matching and playing with those different colors. So that's really good. I've got a lot of pigment down on my all-purpose mat. So now I'm going to come in and get this wet. So I'm just taking a basic little squirt bottle, and the more water you add, the more movement you're going to get, and the more of a wash you're going to get. So I'm adding lots of squirts of water to these colors. Then you can take your cardstock and you can place it down directly onto this all-purpose mat. So when I do this, that color is going to wash over my cardstock. And what I like to do is put it on and then move it around. It's kind of this fun experiment because you never know where the color is all going to end up. But see, it's wet, and as I'm pulling this cardstock, I'm smearing that paint that I put down all over and blending the colors together and getting some nice coverage. And then you'll just simply peel it up, and look how fun that is. Okay, so now look, I can even mix where that all is going because it's still wet. And I can even add more. I've got lots more paint here, so I could even think, oh, I want even more. I'll turn it this way and do the same thing, tap into it. You can go back in as many times as you want. And look at that. Such fun, just creative washes of color. You've got some nice spots here. If you don't like that, smear it again. Just turn it back over on your all-purpose mat and rub it around some more. If you want it to be more blended like that, that's from movement while it was tipped over. If I have these kind of looks, it's because I went straight onto the all-purpose mat, picked it up, and that's where it stayed. So you get to control how much you want to change that color, place that color. You have a little control, not a lot, but that's part of the fun, is just creating your own look to this. So now I'm just going to wipe off this so that we can use it to put the project on top. And again, look how easy that color wipes right off the all-purpose mat. You can just use it again and again. It's so awesome. So now I've got this beautiful background, and now I want to add just a little bit more to it as well. And it's still wet, it's going to dry. You'll see it's starting to warp just a little bit because that was a lot of water, and this is just regular white cardstock. So if you're using watercolor paper, you won't have as much warping, but if you do have just basic cardstock, the technique absolutely works. You just might want to iron it afterwards, or if you have a laminator, you can put it through. Just some heat to press it back down will help it not to keep that warped shape. So now I want to add some splatters to this because we're building kind of our own little mixed media background. So as beautiful as this is, I want to add just another level of intensity. So I'm coming back to my watercolor paints, and I still have yellow in my brush, but that's fine. I'm going to come in and grab that magenta color, and this will make a beautiful coral because I still have yellow in my brush. And I'm just going to squeeze out just a little bit of water. So now I've got a little water coming through with a lot of paint on my brush, and I can simply take my paintbrush, my water brush, and tap it on my finger and look at those splatters. You can see how much color intensity you get, and you can layer that right on top of those beautiful swashes, and it just gives it even more detail and dimension. So I can add that by just simply tapping and doing as little or as much as I want. Again, you might not be able to control when you get a nice big splatter or a softer splatter, but just tapping it on your finger and kind of pointing it in the area you want that color to land is a really easy way to achieve that look. One other way that I like to do this is to grab one of my acrylic blocks. Now these are for stamps, and so obviously we use them for stamping, but I use them sometimes as my palette as well. So I will go ahead and transfer that color onto my acrylic block, and then I just use the paintbrush to flick this where I want it to go. So I'm taking the color from the block, and this you get a little bit more control because you're placing it right where you want those splatters to go. So again, a really fun look to add that dimension and transfer those splatters on top of that beautiful wash that you've created. So this was done using the White Daisy basic cardstock, and again, any type of warping when it dries, you can just put down and iron and it will go nice and flat again. Now if you do have access to watercolor paper, this is our cold press watercolor paper, and you can see the dimension on this. I'll show you on this close-up camera, maybe you can see some of that dimension. This is a lot thicker, and a cold press watercolor has that texture in it. So this, you can do the exact same thing, the fun techniques, the difference being that you would want to get this wet first. So you want your paper wet. Whenever you're working with watercolor paper specifically and you're trying to put color onto it, you want the paper to be wet first so that it will absorb the color. So we can do that same thing. I'll just go ahead and add some of this color and show you that we can do the exact same thing here by just putting this down and smearing it around. And again, I get that beautiful color transferring. I can add more water if I want that to move even more. And again, controlling where I want that to go. So you can see I have even more movement and can place that color the more water that I add. Now just to show you one more way that you can do the smooshing technique is by using packaging. So here are the packages from my water brush. They're just, disposable plastic, but I can use this to help transfer color. So I can take this and I'll go ahead and grab, we'll go back to our trusty pink, it's so pretty, this dark magenta color, and I can transfer it onto packaging like this. And if you have a big piece of plastic, you can have even more coverage. And then we're just going to get that wet, And this way, what I like about this technique, I like them both, they're just both different, is that I can place this and see where I'm going with that color. So as opposed to using the all-purpose mat and flipping it upside down and just getting what you get, this is a fun way to drag and pull that color. See, I can pull it all the way over here if I want. I can steer this color through the packaging this way. And that's just a really fun way, again, to transfer that. Wherever you leave that puddle, I could pick it up if I don't like it and spread it out, or I can purposefully make that nice puddle to get that intense color. So another thing you can do too is take this packaging and crinkle it, and look at that. I can go through, take the packaging by just tapping into the paint and getting that intense color payoff. So many fun, different ways to achieve this technique, and it's just awesome to play around with, and it's so much fun. So I want to show you one last thing. So lastly, I just want to come back to our finished layout. We've created that beautiful wash. We've had fun layering those colors and playing with placement of where we want those swashes to come through and getting those smooshes exactly in place. Now I've come through and added stamping. So you can see here this beautiful stamp set, floral borders and sentiments. I've got lots of different elements, and just by stamping that in black really makes that color play out, and you can see the color coming through the flowers. So what we've done here is just added some of those different smooshes more purposefully here, and this one we've actually cut out and added to the page, and that is just by doing a little more control when you're doing your smooshing. So here you can see my flower smooshes, and I have two different ones. Play around, again, have fun with how that transfers and where the placement is of the different things. I simply came on here and added color to a block and some green, got that wet, and then smooshed it onto the paper to achieve that look. But then I can come in to that beautiful swash when it's dry and take a stamp. So here, if you've never used a Close to My Heart stamp, they always come in this exact same packaging, so it makes it really easy to store. We've got this foam that comes in every stamp set so that you can put it under your project when you go to stamp to give it a little bit of give. And then our stamps are acrylic, so we're going to just peel these nice and easy off the carrier sheet. You're just going to want to slowly peel that up so you don't tear the image. I'll clean this block off because we're actually going to stamp with it now. And you're going to attach your stamp to the block. Now if it's brand new, you want to season that, so I'm just going to rub it on my skin to take off any of the tackiness from the stamp being made. So I'm coming in with Intense Black. The Close to My Heart ink pads are magnetic, so they stack one on top of each other, the lids stack on each other. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I'm going to just take this really fine lined stamp of a flower and stamp it right over my organic looking flower blob, my smoosh, which is so cool because then it's giving definition to that little icon that you've painted. So I'll put the flower back and then we'll grab a leaf. There's one right here. Again, just peel off nice and gentle. Give that a quick season. And we'll stamp this right over that green area. So look how fun the detail of stamping on top of your watercolor paints looks. You can cut this out, you could leave this just as it is on a card and add a beautiful sentiment on top. It just gives such a nice, sharp, crisp stamped image mixed with that watercolor paint to make it feel organic and really creative and really artistic. So hopefully you've had fun learning this smooshing technique and all of the previous techniques that we've taught in our other videos in the series. Tune in next week for our final video teaching you all about the techniques you can use with your watercolors. Be sure that you like and subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss any of our creative videos coming your way. Thanks for joining us today.